Welcome to the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority Invoice Training Series, presented by the Employer Reporting, Compliance, and Education Division. This video will provide information on the Health Insurance Reimbursement Invoice. In 2008, legislation updated statute to address Tier 1 retirees who returned to employment for the first time on or after September 1, 2008, and who elect to remain with the retiree health insurance through the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority. If the reemployed retiree meets a set of criteria, the employer must reimburse the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority for the cost of the health insurance premium at a rate not to exceed the single-level premium for the plan. This statute was amended again in July 2015 for retirees returning to school boards. Now, let's take a look at the who and why of this invoice creation. Part of the criteria to determine if the invoice will be created is the employee must be in a participating position status. The position status of part-time and intermittent can fall under the participating or the non-participating category, depending on whether the retiree works the required monthly average over the fiscal or calendar year. If a retiree returns in a position that qualifies as participating, the incoming record on the monthly report should contain the retired reemployed contribution group. But if the retiree returns in a position that does not qualify as participating, the employer needs to properly report the contribution group as non-participating to prevent a health insurance reimbursement invoice from being generated. If you have questions about what makes a position participating or non-participating, please contact your ERCE team. For employers other than school boards, the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority creates these invoices if the returning retiree meets 3 criteria. First, the employer hires the returning retiree in a statutorily defined regular full-time position. Second, the employer reports him under the retired reemployed contribution group on the monthly report. And third, the returning retiree remains on the KPPA retiree health insurance plan upon reemployment. For school board employers, Kentucky Public Pensions Authority creates this invoice if the employee meets 4 criteria. The first 3 are the same as they are for the other participating employers. The 4th criterion, added by the 2015 amendment, is the requirement that the returning retiree work more than 80 days in the school year. The Health Insurance Reimbursement Invoice is available in the Invoice module of the Report tab in Employer Self-Service. To view the invoice, click the Invoice Number hyperlink. This multi-page invoice contains the invoice information, billing voucher, and invoice details. The invoice may contain a single individual or multiple returning retirees, depending upon the rehires of each agency. On the first page of the invoice, the Employer Information section provides the name, employer code, and address for the employer. The Invoice Details section includes the invoice number, due date for payment, and the amount for the invoice. Below the details are instructions on how to pay the invoice, which an agency can do either electronically or by mailing a check or money order. If the agency chooses to pay this invoice by mailing a check or money order, they need to include the voucher portion of this invoice from the bottom of page 1 along with their payment. The following page of the invoice begins again with the employer information. The invoice details contain the same information as page 1, but also includes the list of returning retirees who participate in the KPPA insurance program and a breakdown of the reimbursement amounts due for each employee. You may notice that the amount might vary from person to person, which could be due to the different premiums for the several plans offered to retirees. But the amount due will never be more than the single-level premium for the plan the retiree selected. Once the invoice is issued, the agency has 30 days from the date of creation to pay the invoice. The due date can be found within the invoice details on page 1 of the invoice. Thank you for viewing the Health Insurance Reimbursement Invoice Training. If an agency has questions regarding any of their invoices, they may contact the ERCE team through the employer hotline.